All right, everyone. And by everyone, I mean you three. Welcome back to Put Up or Shut Up. And, with that being said, you've all been here before. You do know the rules of the game. I don't need to reiterate. I don't need to build what the show is. But I'm going to expect that you're all doing great today. Am I right or wrong?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, always nice to hear the things that come out of the bear's mouth.
Fair enough. All right. First question. Biggest surprise of IEM Oakland. Dust Moret.
So my biggest surprise for IEM Oakland was the fact that Navi got eliminated in the group stage. Despite their problems, I thought with the group that they had that they should have been able to make it out.
Thorin?
That I actually had FaZe making it to the semis. I mean, they actually swept their group. They came close to making the finals. I don't think anyone would have actually predicted that going into the event.
That would be the next victim. That's you, Eric.
Team Immortals, they've been doing pretty shaky online right before the event, and they even said themselves that they were surprised to make it out of group stage. So that's why I picked Immortals.
Okay, well, who wants to fire the first blast? I think I'm going to give it to Thorin. Look at him. He's eager.
Okay.
He's ready.
You ready? This one's easy, boys, because both of them have picked teams that were in Group A. And so here's the thing. On the side of Eric, Immortals making out in second here wasn't actually that crazy. I mean, you look at the teams that are above. Okay, Navi's a tough one, but the other ones, Tyloo, Team Liquid's been pretty bad offline recently. G2's had their real problems. So actually, they didn't really accomplish that much. And then when they got to the playoffs, they got smashed completely by NIP. So I think the Immortals one's not really that crazy. That's kind of the range within I think a lot of people had them. And then in terms of Dust, I think the big problem in terms of Navi is that they've actually been on a downward spiral, the last event and a half or so. At E-League, they looked kind of a bit whack, They didn't really put up a fight against SK in the best of three there. So I don't think it was entirely impossible to predict that. I mean, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
I mean,
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that as far as the Navi thing goes, I think, things didn't go so well for them at this event. But you have to remember that E-League, I mean, they did just lose to SK. It's not like they lost to slouches. So it can almost be somewhat forgiven.
Addressing our arguments, darling.
Yeah. So I'm saying the reason why it's surprising that Navi didn't make it out of groups, like you were saying, it's not surprising because they've had their struggles, right?
Okay.
Right. So you were saying that you thought it wasn't surprising because they were having their struggles.
It's okay. He'll get the format soon, guys. He'll get the format soon. Don't worry. Let's keep going. Let's keep rolling.
I'm just saying that it's still surprising Navi didn't make
you said that about 5 times.
So bad.
Your point is supposed to be to address ours. You're supposed to be arguing against our points.
Defending my answer, but okay.
That's not what the segment is.
Look, you defend your answer and attack others at the same time.
Yeah, so come on, hit our answers. Why is our answers
please hit it hard, Dust. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, I mean, I thought that everyone assumed that FaZe was going to get better when Kerrigan came on board, that he was going to add some structure to the team. He was going to unlock some of their players. You did see at least some decent play going into Oakland, but sure, it is surprising they came out first and didn't drop a single map. I will admit that. But Group A was a much weaker group, and Navi's a team with a lot of firepower that I thought would make it out. That's all I'm really trying to say here.
Eric, you got anything?
I mean, you talk about Team FaZe. I mean, they've been doing pretty well last couple tournaments, last month at least, and especially with the new roster. And I think that, it's not that surprising that they got as far as they did. But, I'm saying Immortals, who, yes, you say Group A, the weaker of them, but, they still took every team that they played to the limit. Yes, of course, it's not by a wide margin. They took Navi in overtime and barely beat Team Liquid. But Team Liquid has shown in the past that, once it comes to majors or even big tournaments, they do well. So it's not that crazy that Team Immortals just got destroyed by NIP because they won the tournament. It's not that bad. It's like they were surprised themselves. And if a team themselves say, "Hey, we didn't even expect to do this well," then that's kind of it's a question mark.
To be fair, Immortals did beat Cloud9 out by Power Masters and FaZe going into Oakland. So, I mean, they were already showing pretty good play, and they already have really good firepower. That's not going to change just because they made one roster move.
And also, Immortals actually only beat Tyloo and Team Liquid in full regulation or overtime games. So these weren't even that comprehensive, I think, in terms of games. Whereas actually, to go to the FaZe point, they didn't even win by Power Masters. They didn't do that. They didn't get out of the group stage at Pro League. Okay, sure, they got out of their group at E-League. That's it, though. So aside from that, we had no actual evidence they could make it deep in tournaments. And in this one, they almost went to the final.
Yeah. I mean, but Tyloo, they were a random team, though. I mean, you say they're terrible, but they almost
They're pretty
they almost beat
consistent at
Navi.
losing. They're pretty consistent.
They almost beat
losing.
Navi, even though Navi's kind of shaky.
It's not too
right
random
now.
in terms of the win-loss column, Eric. So, that's real consistent, reliable. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Dust, I need to hear more from you.
Yeah, I mean, just going on to the Navi point again, I mean, yes, they did have a shaky thing, but it was only against SK at E-League. It's not like they lost to a slouch. You look at the rest, they've won New York. They took top 4 at Epicenter. They have a lot of firepower. They're in a weak group. You expect them to make it out. I mean, hell, I think Thorin even picked them to win the whole event before it started. So, I mean, how can you say that it's not a surprise they didn't make it out of the group?
I didn't say it was unsurprising. I said it's not the most surprising thing. Like, if I had to pick 2 things, I don't think if you asked all the analysts in the world, is it possible Navi could go out in the group? I don't think people would say that's impossible. Whereas if you told people, could FaZe like almost go to the final, almost beat NIP on Nuke, have like a almost 2-0 NIP, they'd be like, no way. That, like not yet, maybe in maybe 3 months.
Do people really would have thought with like Astralis, with all their struggles, that Glaive would have had that much of an impact to pull Astralis
That's
through
not
and actually
really relevant.
top Navi?
And pick Astralis, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, but I'm building my argument about Navi, like the fact that Astralis came over them, the fact that
Astralis
came over them, and they've had their struggles.
Navi was in, so I don't think that would be impossible. No.
I just think that between Liquid, Tyloo, G2 struggles and such, that Navi should have made it out of Group A, and it's very surprising that they didn't. That's all I'm trying to get at.
So basically, this is already one of the more heated episodes we've ever had. We've only had
It's just because Josh defends his own point every time instead of attacking ours. The point is to destroy our arguments, not to make your own stronger.
wrecked.
I mean, to be fair, FaZe is a good argument. I can't lie against that. The fact they went 5-0 is surprising.
I
know.
I'm giving you a hint right now. Don't tell us when we've said things right. You just ignore that part. You're supposed to be like, let us say we're right, okay?
All right.
Give yourself a chance, mate.
Eric, give me a closing thought.
Eric,
give me a
closing thought. I think Immortals. FaZe. They're good. They've been playing well. Them getting that far is not that surprising. Navi, yeah, they haven't made it, out of it. But lately they've been playing really bad with Simple, especially with E-League and the online and previous lands. So I think Immortals is the more surprising one.
And Thorin, please, Thorin, close out this loop of infinite hatred against all of you.
Yeah, I think the big problem with this one is that it's not the question, is it surprising? Is it which is the most surprising? So to me, the idea that FaZe, a team that, by the way, had never even made it out of groups before Carrigan got here, and had only made it out of two other groups, and one was a small tournament leading into this one, and the other was just E-League, They'd never made it deep in a tournament. So the idea they could go to the final of like a 250K or more tournament, that's like unprecedented in history for my books.
I mean, dare I say this one seems to be pretty clear cut, and it's pretty self-explanatory why. No one expected FaZe to have that sort of deep tournament run. That would make them a surprise. However, Dust, defending your answer and not attacking others is not part of the game. Eric, you get a check mark for effort or something. That's good. So we're going to give this point to Thorin. Not a big deal. Everybody calm down. That was a good start. Everybody's blood pressure is a little high. We got started a little faster than usual. And so it's kind of like, we're ready. It's game time, right? Not a big deal. We're going to go to question 2. With 6 teams being tied at 8-10 for a record in ECS, which of the teams would you have liked to see make it to the playoffs? And we're going to start with you, Mr. Shield.
Okay, so I'm actually picking the team that did make it after the round difference breaker, which was Team Dignitas. And the reason why is because they're a team where I actually think they match up well against every single team in the world right now. So you put them into a playoff bracket. It doesn't matter who they're playing or how far they go, but you're going to have very exciting games because they've got a very dynamic pick ban where they actually alter their perma ban depending on the opponent. And then in terms of map pool, they actually do have a 5-deep map pool, so they can play not only their pick, but then they can also play whatever you pick. And so I think they're a team where they're just going to make really, really close, really exciting playoff series.
Okay, Dusko.
I'm going to pick Virtus Pro because we don't get to see them play so much. Like, they've been taking breaks and skipping lands, so it would be nice to see them at a big event like this, especially given that the events they have been to throughout like the month of October, for example, they had really strong finishes and they've, made finals or taken first places. So it would have been cool to see them at this event.
And last but not least, Mr. Stromberg, are you with us?
I am with you. I'm waiting for the cue. I mean, getting everyone else the cue, and I'm just here sitting there lollygagging like, hey, guys, I'm waiting for my turn. But you know what?
Hey, guys.
I picked Nip, and I mean, after them winning IEM Oakland, why don't you want to see these people on land, especially with Pith returning and then winning the tournament as his first tournament back? I mean, they have fire right now. They have the momentum going. I mean, so you want to see these guys.
All right, who wants it?
I'll take it again. I'm just going to make the point that we've already seen Nip and Dignitas play a lot. Dignitas has had their pitfalls, by the way. Like, they went out in groups in EPL. They just lost a flip side at DreamHack Winter. Like, they seem to be struggling. Meanwhile, VP, the results they do have that they have, like, at least recently when they have played, have been really strong. You want to see them back into the mix because they're supposed to be a team that's challenging for top team in the world. Let's give them their chance to prove that and take that mantle back from SK by getting in a big event like this.
But I'm a big fan of VP and all, and I think they're awesome on land. But they kind of seem a team that half-asses their online stuff. And so if you're playing an online league and you're half-assing it, you're not traveling to all the events you can, you're taking breaks, then, like, why keep putting them in the top 2 spots, even though, like, it's like
all like they half-assed this. They were in a 6-way tie and lost on a tiebreaker. Like,
but what do you want? They're notorious for losing online.
Yeah, I agree with Eric's point, actually. Yeah, like, it's famous. I mean, we're going back even over a year that Virtus Pro does not perform in the online leagues. And so usually they just outright don't even have a chance to qualify for offline leagues. This time they don't, because after all the possible tiebreakers, they still couldn't be one of the team that was going to qualify. So I think the big problem for Virtus Pro is they don't qualify online anyway, which is how you get into the playoffs of this tournament. And then secondly, we haven't seen them in a month. And so no one really knows what will happen in a month. Like, the thing with Virtus Pro is if you give them a lot of time off, sometimes they'll have an event, they'll come out, they'll just be flat. Maybe they could be great, but maybe they could just be terrible too. Like, they're one of the only, like, world #1 teams that really can just go down to 0 like that.
I mean, I think that's just more the reason to want to see them play, to see what they really are going to show us, especially with E-League coming up. That's going to be the next really big tournament. So why wouldn't you want to see them step up in a tournament before E-League to, like, show you what they've been working on this?
Because I'd rather wait for E-League so that I could see them in that really hype playoff series against FaZe. So
why wouldn't you say the same thing about Dignitas?
Because actually, like I said already, I know Dignitas will definitely provide, like, consistent performances. In terms of Eric's pick was NIP. Problem is,
they're getting smashed.
I don't think you could. They never got smashed once, but okay. I don't think that you can say that NIP is, like, that great because of the win at Oakland. Because if you look at the way they won Oakland, very close series against FaZe, very close series in the final against SK, only narrowly won that. I don't really think you can say that, like, on a day-to-day basis, they can replicate that. I mean, at the moment they do that, once every 4 months. The next two come out and they're just a team that goes out in the semis and they're just okay.
Well, as for Nip, yeah, I mean, some of their matches were pretty, small margin of victory, but they end up winning the tournament anyways. I mean, that's what's important, is winning. They won. They showed the best. They just had a roster change with Pith being inactive for months. Okay. And so, like, in the conference, like, CSGO is a conference game. And when you just win a tournament, you're probably going to have a couple hot streaks. You guys are going to start playing well. You guys are going to start hitting their shots. You're going to be confident, and that's what it takes to be a champion. And NIP right now is showing that they're a championship contender, and they're not even in a LAN tournament where they just barely miss the margins of round differences or whatever crazy hurling that they have now. But as for right now, NIP, they're amazing. I think they could be the next team if they just keep coming to these tournaments and playing well.
Okay, so like you say, your criteria is, like, if you win, like, that's the metric if you've done it. Well, they didn't do that in the online games. They didn't win enough games to get in. They didn't win enough rounds to get in, whereas actually Dignitas did win both enough games and enough rounds to qualify. Therefore, Dignitas is the team in the playoffs.
But then that's the whole argument with rounds won and lost. There should be more playoffs for the tournament in order to be in the finals or into the LAN finals and stuff like that. So, yes, round win difference is kind of a bad way to justify making a tournament or not. And it's unfortunate for NIP that they got shafted on that. I
think we're just getting hung up on the wrong thing here. Like, we all agree that the format's probably not that good. That's not even what the question's about. It's just about who would you like to see there, which is obviously completely subjective. I think that Dignitas has.
Yeah, it's just a game show, mate. So
I think Dignitas has, like, shown off that they've been falling off a little bit, and that's, like, the biggest reason why I don't want to see them in, because I feel like they've had some weaknesses. I'd like to see them, like, take some time to just prepare for E-League, whereas VP, they've already been out for a long time, so I want to see them in a tournament before E-League.
Well, actually, I mean, both teams only played in one tournament since the last time you saw VP, which is E-League. Both of them won their group, whereas actually VP hasn't had a chance to look bad because they didn't go in any of the tournaments. So you can't say that Dignitas played bad, you can't watch them. Virtus Pro played nothing. They didn't show a single round at those tournaments. They were sat at home.
I agree. That's why I want to see them at this tournament. I want to see what they're made of before E-League.
At this point, let's go with some closing statements. Let's hear it, Duncan.
Okay, well, I mean, like I said, first of all, they were the team that qualified. Like, they did meet all the criteria necessary to get the playoff spot for Dignitas. Secondly, like I say, they have a great history of matching up with people. I mean, funnily enough, even in these games that Dust's talking about that they lost, they matched up very well, actually. They were in those games. They were competitive. They played pretty decently. They didn't win the games. So even in bad games, they actually tend to show up and make a close game. So that's great for fans to watch. And I think just in terms of the other two's arguments, like Virtus Pro, we haven't seen them for a month, you know, and you're judging a team that's like a 12th of the year behind us. And then in terms of the pick for Eric, like, you know, just because like Rocky won one fight in the first movie doesn't mean he wins all the fights in the other movie. It doesn't matter how awesome they win.
All right, Dust, let's hear it.
I mean, again, I think this was just more about who you'd like to see. And for me, since Virtus Pro hasn't played a lot recently, they've decided to take a break because of all this oversaturation. They wanted to focus up. I want to see what they're going to do at this tournament. That's why I would have liked to have seen them there. I think they're a team that has a very storied history. The oldest lineup in CSGO still running. We haven't seen them play so much in the last month or so. So I think it would have been nice to see them play at ECS, where I've already seen Nip and Dignitas play recently. I know I'm going to get them at E-League. I want to see one more tournament from Virtus Pro before they step into the E-League playoffs against FaZe.
Eric, please tell me you got a barn burner for me.
Oh, I got a barn burner, right? So for Thorin's pick, well, they made playoffs, so you will see them. So I don't know how that works for this question. And as for Virtus Pro, they're taking time off. They're not focusing on CS. They're spending time with their family. They're having, you know, Pasha's lifting, hanging out, having a good old time in Poland. Neo's just taking it easy. Like, you look at Nip, they just won a tournament. You want to see these guys, how far can they go? How many tournaments can they ring in? There's only speculation. Yeah, as you say, they may only win one and out, but how do we know? Because we won't see them in this next tournament.
Just because something is going to happen, you are allowed to want that to happen as well. I know your life might have given you a different message, Eric, but you can also want things to happen that happen in life. It can be enjoyable. Love everyone. Love everyone.
Oh my God. All right. Well, as usual, Mr. Stromberg, you don't disappoint. I mean, okay, so when we look at this, right? VP has been on the couch. They have been at home. They haven't been playing at these tournaments. Wanting to see them at this tournament is not unreasonable. And Dignitas, you know, they're hot right now. They weren't hot a year ago, right? So, of course, naturally, we want to see them at these tournaments. But, I mean, can Nip get the flame back alive that once, 87-0 dream? I think that has to be a thing that everybody looks at. Like, okay, can they do it again? Maybe, maybe not. Different team, or different players. And at this point, I almost want to award all you a point, but that kind of defeats the purpose because they were all bad arguments. You get participation awards. But I'm going to give it to Mr. Stromberg. Eric, you're going to get on the board before the last person at this show. It's actually impressive. This is the first time for you. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
For the YouTube comments.
Nice.
No, yes, I love it. Thank you. I appreciate the pity point.
No, it's not a pity point. I mean, to be fair, like seeing Nip try to keep this alive would be almost inspirational in its own sort, right? So not a big deal.
Kind of like Eric getting that point so early in the show.
I appreciate it.
You actually just got wrecked. I can't help you there. Okay, so let's move on to question 3. If you had power to change one attribute of North American Counter-Strike in or out of game, what would it be? Let's start with Mr. Stromberg.
All right. So, as being an NA player for a decade plus, my biggest problem has always been is teamwork. Why do we lack so much in teamwork? We're so focused on fragging that we forget the basics of, in order to win, you rely on your team. Look at Michael Jordan. He didn't start winning until he had a good team, and they used teamwork. So, I mean, I think we're focusing in the wrong area.
Dust.
If I had to change one thing, it would be the way that contracts were structured, particularly buyouts, because I feel like we've seen buyouts block teams from coming together and from players from moving around. Apparently, it's happening even right now in this current shuffle. I've heard word that it's been a problem. So that's definitely something I'd like to see change in the scene.
And that leaves Mr. Shield.
Okay, I would like to see the drive to win changed so that more players, that was the number one thing that motivated them in life, was just the drive to win and be a champion. Like, I think if you look around the NA scene, there've been far too many lineups that were just complacent to be like good, but not amazing, like Cloud9 right now. Or you have lineups that are pretty solid, like some of the, like the Optic Gaming lineup, for example, like, you know, they're pretty solid, but have they removed all the dead weight? Have they really gone all out? And will they recruit players that maybe they don't get along with on a personal level? Because that lineup would really win inside the game. And I'm not sure that that's ever been the number one factor for NA.
Well, boys, the floor is open. Please hurt each other's feelings.
So as for contracts, what people don't realize is that the players have the power before they sign the contract. I mean, if you're kind of unsure about that kind of thing, you know, we have to use the leverage of us players and not sign the first thing that we see. You know, oh, we get $1,000 a month and plus free meals. Well, sign me up, sir. And you know, that's how it is. That's how half these teams get signed up. They sign these ludicrous contracts every single time, and the organizations keep taking advantage of them. And I think that's more part to blame the player than the contract itself.
And I think that's just part of changing contracts, though, is also from the player side. Meanwhile, when we talk about Eric over here and we talk about teamwork, I think you have seen it develop on some of the top teams in the North American scene. I think that some of the reasons why you've seen some teams be successful is because some of the chemistry on the team, like the Stewie Automatic duo and how well they work together, how Optic's been working together very well and how they operate. I think that in some cases, teamwork has even helped teams overcome not having crazy amount of skill throughout their entire lineup, maybe only having 2 or 3 players who are very highly skilled. And I think the development of teamwork and tactics have actually been big this year on several of the teams, thanks to coaching and different things like that. So I think that was a problem. I think it's already begun to improve.
Well, I'm glad that. Oh, go ahead, Thorin.
Okay, I think there's actually a few good examples of really good teamwork, actually. Like when I think of the original Cloud9 core, the one that was like Semphis, Nothing, Sean Gares, eventually taking in Shroud, but before that was Swag. These were lineups which I don't think even had the best players in NA. I think some of the best players in NA were over on iBuyPower, but these guys just on their teamwork alone could go head to head with European teams, get wins off them, could actually have maps like Dust 2, Nuke, etc. They could get wins off against some of the best teams in the world. You know, they weren't just doing it by shooting people in the head. And in terms of Dust's point, the problem with the complaint about buyouts is that it's just the next hiding place of people who used to before say, oh, well, the reason why the exact same player isn't as good is because he doesn't have a top salary and he's not on a top team. So now we give him the top salary, put him on a top team, and now it's like, oh, but now it costs a lot to buy him out. Like there have been big buyouts in CSGO. People bought out like JDM, for example. That's like a 6-figure buyout right there. The big problem at the moment isn't the buyout itself. It's that the teams themselves often aren't willing to make that, like that. They aren't willing to pay for it. They think to themselves, right, well, is this player like 10% better than the guy I've got right now? Well, I'm not going to pay like $90,000 for that. I'll wait 3 months, or you know what, I'll get another guy that's cheaper because just to save the money. Whereas if this was like a real sport where like the championship, like I'm saying, the drive to win was just like you're trying to win the major at all costs, you would make a buyout of whatever it might be, 100K for Tarek if you were Cloud9, you know, get that firepower. Or you would make some monster offer to Sean Gares like, listen, just come leave Echo Fox, join Liquid, we'll give you 300K, whatever it might be. They don't really do this though. They tend to like penny pinch a little bit. And so to me, that ties into the drive to win aspect, that there's not that many teams seem to have it as the ultimate factor. Yet if you look at a lot of the European teams, they'll make the hard choice. They'll make the move, which actually on paper maybe does remove a big name that's popular to get a team that might win the next major.
You know, I'm glad that you pointed out that there are a few teams with nice teamwork, but again, we're talking about the whole NA scene here, not just 1 or 2 teams. And the problem with the NA scene is these top 2 teams, like right now Cloud9 Optic, they don't have teams to practice against in order to keep building this teamwork, because all these other teams are so far behind because their lack of teamwork is like people are so focused on frag videos, having highlight plays, just peeking by themselves instead of waiting for the flashbang, waiting for the support players. You look at the top teams from like SK who have, I think, have astounding teamwork and timing. They rely on each other. They rely on these key points that a lot of these other teams do not pick up on, or at least work on in the NA scene.
So Eric, you know Cloud9, right? Well, you know teams, if you're ever playing in matchmaking and a player leaves the game, if you're playing 4v5 on like CT side, you got to play even better teamwork. You better really work with the guys on your team because there's one less player. Cloud9 at the moment is playing 4v5 with a bot. The bot is AWPing every round and they're winning some of these games. They're actually competitive. That's got to be like above and beyond even some of the European teams.
Oh, hey, I mean,
All right,
come
hold on.
He can't be that bad. He's not that bad. I mean,
Hold
he's probably
on.
not in his top shape, but he's not that bad.
Hold on. We've heard the decoy joke about a dread. Now this is a new shot. Now, Dust, I actually need to hear from you, though. You're a little quiet over there. You all right, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I think again with just the whole teamwork situation, the only NA teams that really struggle with teamwork nowadays are teams like Complexity, Splice, and that E United team. I think all the other teams tactically have actually improved a lot. I think the teamwork actually has been there on most of these teams. You also have to take into account that half of NACS now is being played by Brazilians or Australians or New Zealand or what have you. The Germans came over and NRG. So I think the teamwork in the NA scene right now really isn't that bad. I don't think that's really the problem. As far as the whole drive aspect, I guess it depends on what direction you take drive. It seems like the direction Thorin has taken is the not the willingness to make big plays, to pick up new players onto the team, or like really shed dead weight, or like take every single necessary step that you can to make yourself a better team, which to me kind of ties into the contract issue about whether or not you're going to actually spend the money or whether it's affordable or not. I guess it varies. Like you mentioned, like people not willing to break the bank to buy Sean Gares. I don't know that that's true. I think people have approached him and just hasn't worked out, in my opinion, because he was so happy with the situation at the Fox because of, I guess, being able to spend more time with his fiance and he's making good money. So I think people have tried to reach out to him and they just couldn't get him. And I think it has been that case for several other players as well, with the exception of Cena not buying Tarek. That was one of the examples, I guess, in favor of.
The thing is, though, technically, you don't actually need to do the buyout. Like, as most people are on a 1-year contract. If you just wait until the month that ends, you can make them an offer with no buyout. Teams just don't do that. They either try to buy the guy instantly, find out there's a buyout and don't do it, or they go, oh, okay, well, we'll just stay with our team, and then they forget about it. They don't do like real sports. In real sports, you wait till the contract ends, then you get approach the guy. And you have a plan to get that guy because that's where you don't have to pay for some sort of trade.
And I think you are going to see that soon. And I think the thing is, we have to wait that year. Some of these contracts were more than 1 year long. They were 2 years long. And so you had to wait even longer to make that happen. We're talking back to like 2014 if those contracts were in fact 2 years
Only
long.
the CLG ones, as far as I know, were 2 years long. Everyone else was 1 year.
Well, that certainly affected Tarek in his whole situation. So Optic, finally a team that had a shit ton of money and could afford to buy him, were able to do it. And now you see the results of that. Like Liquid, yeah, they spent the big bank on JDM. That was only after they got like a huge investment and they actually were able to increase their budget to make a move like that happen. Prior to that, people, I don't think, really did have the money to spend on some of these players. Cloud not only just recently got big investment, from what I understand, that they just announced publicly with that whole like $3 million in private investment, but these are all very recent events where budgets got increased to make those types of things happen.
This is such a beautiful argument. I would just love to see it keep going. Eric, close us out, or close yourself out. Let's put it that way.
All right. So the drive to win, yes, you have to have that. But if you're practicing the wrong thing, if you're not doing the right thing, you can't be delusional and expect to win. You got to be still doing the right stuff, like perfecting your teamwork. It's a team game, 5-on-5. And as for contracts, I mean, it'd be nice for the players, but that's not technically going to affect a lot of these teams in terms of just like, oh, you're swapping players around, just kind of see how it is. It's not a recipe to win. All right, you could have the 5 best players, but if they don't have the teamwork or willing to work, then they're not going to win.
Go on, Thorin. You look eager.
I mean, I think for the contracts one, like I said, like we have had contracts done before where people did buyouts. Like you can wait and you can literally get the exact same player for free if you just wait that amount of time. In terms of teamwork, I think it's a little bit harsh to suggest that just like none of the top teams have teamwork, or like the top 5 teams lack in teamwork. I think they're lacking a bit of everything across the board. So it's not that I think teamwork is like the one thing holding them back from being really good. Whereas to me, like it really is like that drive to practice, to do everything it takes, to give up your role sometimes, to sacrifice, or to even be selfish. Say you're a player like Shroud who has a lot of skill, not just to let yourself be a role player and be like, if I'm going to be in this team, I'm going to go all in and you're going to give me the roles. So I think drive to win can apply to everyone. And I think if everyone's going that direction, the other things are problems, they're hurdles you can overcome, but you've got to have that thing pushing you over them.
Go on, Dust.
Yeah, so again, I think we kind of slammed the whole teamwork thing, because I think the top end of NA has really solved that problem. I think it's still maybe a problem for some of the lesser teams, but they're irrelevant anyway in an argument about top international CS. When it comes to the drive aspect, like I said, I think there's many different variables involved in that, but I think one of the things that Thorin stressed was this idea of being willing to shed dead rate, or willing to change roles, or willing to buy players, or willing to wait for players. But I feel like that roots in the fact that these contracts have lasted for so long that it's a long-ass time to wait, like a year, possibly 2 years, I guess, in the one case of CLG, but for the other teams, year long, where you have to wait for those moves to happen. And it's only been recently that teams have gotten more funding to have the budget to even handle buyouts if they didn't want to wait for a year long. Like, that's a long waiting process, especially now with so many tournaments that take place throughout a year. So I think that the contract thing is definitely just huge.
Okay. Now, in my almighty chair that I'm sitting in, when I sit back and I look at the three of you argue about this, I think that one thing becomes very, very apparent, right? So you can have all the teamwork, you can have all the drive to win, but when you're not under the same roof, you're not able to bring it all together into the same house, then that is actually useless in terms of, oh, you don't want to play with this guy. Well, you're locked into contracts, this and that. I think it's pretty clear that the contractual situation in NA probably does hinder it quite a bit. So not just a pity point, but I actually believe Dust came through on this one. I believe you do deserve this point. So I'm going to award it to you there, Dust Moret. Congratulations. Welcome to the game. But all very valid points nonetheless. So moving forward, we're going to go to most overrated player in CSGO history. And Dust, you won that point, so we're just going to let you go with it from here.
I'm actually going to pick Shroud from North America. And the reason for this is because I feel like the image that was created of him, thanks to his stream and like his flashy mechanics, have really put him on a pedestal by the community. He's always on the front page of Reddit. This has happened for quite some time. And I think while he has had some good performances, he hasn't had like consistent star performances enough to like merit the amount of hype that he really has gotten from the community over the last couple of years.
Okay, Dust, are you aware that Reddit will actually hate you for this?
I mean, they already do because of the Smiths thing, so nothing's really going to change.
Fair enough. All right, Thorin, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to pick Flusher, actually, because whenever you do the most overrated, there's two ways you can go. You can either pick someone who's actually legitimately bad, but people think is good, or you can pick someone like this, who was good, even very good, but people overrated them even in that sense. So I always say, if you were like the 5th best player of all time and someone said you're the 1st best player of all time, that's a big overrating, actually, because at the top level, we're talking about a big, like, level that you have to be able to reach. So in this particular scenario, the only time Flusher was the best player on Fnatic for like a legit stretch, not one tournament, was actually before they got Olaf Meister and Crims. At the end of the old Fnatic, the one that won the first major, he was the best player when the team was not doing so well. He was like a really good lurker. He was very solid. As soon as they got Olaf Meister and Crims, in the end of 2014, it was Crims and JW were the star players. Flusher was like the 3rd or 4th best player. In 2015, when they're winning all their majors, Olaf Meister is by far the best player, probably the best player in the world, the most complete player. So actually at no point in time, and then the next lineup, it was Olaf Meister and Dennis were the best players. And yet, because at specific tournaments, like the odd major, something like that, because he'd have like either big flashy play because of his play style or one big tournament, there's people who actually used to say, Flush is the best player in the world, or they'd try and argue, like, he should be like a top 10 player in the history of the game. Whereas, I mean, I'd put it onto that argument. If you were never even the best player on your team during all the big accomplishments, how could you really be that good? So I think that is like overrating what is already a very good player into like a godlike player that I never saw him as. So I have him as my most overrated.
Okay, Eric, please.
All right, so don't over.
Come on.
Relax with this one, okay, guys? So
Oh, no,
I think the most overrated player in the world is Simple. Now, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Okay, I see a lot of talks, a lot of people on Reddit, HLTV, whatever, saying this guy is the best player in the history of CS:GO. Now, if you were rated the best player in the history of CS:GO, you'd be winning nonstop, at least close to coming winning. But ever since he joined Navi, every team he's been on, he's brung them down. He's been cancer to the team. I don't care how good you are in skill. If you're bringing down 4 other players with you on the team, then you won't do as well as as your potential. So that's why I think he's overrated.
Okay, how about this, Dust? How triggered does Thorin look right now?
He looks
like,
really triggered. Should we let him? Should we just let him loose now?
Or park, mate.
Should we just let him loose now, or do you just want to
just do it,
Thorin?
Thorin, let's go.
Here we go.
Ahead.
So Eric's easy. He's going to be light work. So I'll start with Eric. So the idea that Simple, isn't that great and brought down his players. Like, for a start off, when he played on Flipside, he took a Flipside that had a guy who couldn't even speak Russian, their main language, as a stand-in, and beat NIP in a best of 3. Probably the biggest upset against NIP ever at ESWC 2015. Then he went over to Team Liquid. Again, he doesn't speak amazing English. He's playing with people who only speak English. He took this team from NA. NA had never even been to the finals of a major. He took them to the finals of a major. He took them to another top 4. And they had one top 4 in history before Simple. Now they have 3, 2 of them because of Simple playing in that team. Those teams have never accomplished more without him. Then you go to his most recent team, Na'Vi. He helped them win ESL 1 New York. They had never won a $250,000 or more prize pool tournament. Now they have won one, thanks to him playing in the lineup. So they actually have their biggest result as a result of him playing. So I think it's pretty justified that he's a pretty fucking amazing player.
I'm gonna just put the cherry on top of that Sunday really quick and just say that Simple is definitely not the one who's brought down Na'Vi. Their problems has been the coaching rule, the fact that C's has really struggled in a new in-game leadership role. There's so many other factors that have really caused Na'Vi to have their struggles. It's certainly not Simple that's been the one. In fact, Guardian came out and said they love Simple and thought he worked great with the team and thought his teamwork was good. So I just want to add a little bit on the end.
That was in the honeymoon phase, as we like to call it these days. The honeymoon. When he first joined, they loved him, but now it's like even.
How do you know what they feel now?
Said, well, Simple said after his last event at IEM, he was like, "Hey, look, I think Na'Vi can do a lot better without me." Well, that says a lot to what you are as a team player. And talking about Flusha, he was on one of the best teams in the history of CS:GO, and he was the strat caller. Maybe yes, he wasn't top fragger.
He definitely wasn't a strat caller, but okay.
I thought he called a lot of strats.
He called in this last lineup earlier this year, but even then, only like some tournaments, and then sometimes they had Vugo take over, so he wasn't doing it that often. It was mainly Pronax in the old lineup, and then this one, like I say, Vugo sometimes did it.
Yeah, yeah, Flusha.
Hit me with something else. Come on.
Flusha. I got on for Flusha. I'm sorry.
Okay, Can I go for Dust then? So Dust's argument about Shroud.
Wait, hold on. We're going for each other now, or we're going at?
No, I meant his argument. Obviously.
Okay, yeah,
we're
please.
all mates.
Okay.
All mates.
Just
so
want to make
his
sure.
argument is that Shroud is the most overrated because of Reddit. Now, I happen to know by studying the demographics of Reddit that there are 2 times more Cloud9 flares than any other team. So the majority of Reddit, in terms of like fan support for one team, is Cloud9 fans. So first and foremost, that's why Shroud is so high up on Reddit. Secondly, the clips that you see on Reddit of Shroud are not Shroud in competitive games. They are Shroud on his stream. Therefore, I don't think it's overrated that people are into his stream because that's what they're watching there. They're not putting up a clip of him killing 2 people and just doing okay at a big tournament. Like in general, those aren't what people are going crazy about. So I don't think anyone really says Shroud is the best NA player. He's a really great player. I think that was like a very brief time in history. I think a lot of time since then, people have critiqued him, or people have, a lot of the European fans have pretty much said, this guy doesn't show up to majors. He's not that good overall, So I think it's mainly just his stream. And so in that sense, that doesn't really apply to him as a competitive player.
Yeah, not to keep burning on Shroud, but in the NA scene, like as Thorin said, a lot of people don't talk about him being an amazing team player. Like a lot of people think he's actually dead weight. Well, not dead weight, but he's lacking in the upper high tier 1 playing. He's never there in matches. He's there on some. If they have pistols, yeah, you get some kills, but like, where is he in the matches? He's not a big team impact like he is in Pugs on those Reddit clips, as you say.
Yeah, just coming into this, first of all, like the whole thing with Flusha being overrated, like for me, I haven't ever seen like an overwhelming argument that he was like the best player of Fnatic or was the best player in the world. I think the only person ever called him the best player in the world was himself in an interview that he did. I mean, I think that Thorin nailed it in his own speech, was that like in almost all the current iterations of Fnatic that we know, ever since the Olaf Meister Krims thing happened, he was always considered like maybe the 2nd or 3rd best player on the team. Like it always was someone else who's a star on the team, like Krims for a while, Olaf Meister for a while. On like the last part of the Fnatic he was in, it was like guys like Dennis, and you were waiting to see if Olaf Meister was going to make a comeback or something like that. So I think that he has been appropriately rated by the community for the numbers that he puts in, like where people always seem to put him as like 2nd or 3rd best on the team. I don't remember there being like this huge outcry in a very long time, at least in recent memory, that Flusha was like a best player in the world, or best player on Fnatic or what have you. He might be the best player on Godsent now, perhaps the guy that they rely on now because of the roster and the situation that they're in. But I think that for most of his career in recent memory, I don't think he was ever rated that high. So I don't know how he would be overrated.
There was a thread 8 months ago on Reddit called who like about Flusha being the best in the world. It was like pretty high up. There was a bunch of players, including Fnatic themselves, Olaf Meister and Vugo themselves said Flusha was the best in the world, and some of the NIP players said Flusha was the best in the world.
Hold on.
8 months ago.
I can't,
and one
I can't
thread.
even.
8 months ago. I'm sorry. Was it supposed to be today? I thought it was all time. My mistake.
Hold on.
Yeah, but it's just one thread still, anyway.
Thorin, how in the?
No,
how
I didn't say that's the only thread.
You know, there's a thread 8 months ago.
Because I remember.
Did you know that?
It's pretty
He
next
just-
level, mate.
No.
It triggered me because I think he's overrated. That's why I remember this stuff.
I'm actually impressed. Okay. Let's clear some closing arguments here from. Let's start with Dust.
Again, I think my closing argument here is that I don't think Flush has ever been overrated. I think he's been appropriately rated. Maybe there is this odd thing here or there when someone says he's the best player in the world, but I haven't seen like an overpouring argument about it. When it comes to Simple, I think that DeBear's argument is just whack. Like, he's not the cause of Navi's problems. They have a bunch of other things that are the cause of problems. And I mean, Thorin already dished him out, so there's really not much I could add to that. I think that was already pretty much the grand slam there. And then coming back around the Shroud, again, I just think that he's put on this pedestal as being like this ridiculous player with this high skill ceiling. And while he's had some good events here and there, it's never been enough to merit him being like considered like some type of star player like he had been really, especially like early on in Cloud9, like when he joined at the end of 2014 until, perhaps like to the middle of this year when finally people started to realize that he wasn't playing as well. But even still to this day, I don't see like a crazy amount of critique against him when he performs poorly. It seems like people are still willing to defend him. So I think that that's like a sign of being a little bit overrated.
Thorin.
Okay, I actually also saw a Reddit thread which was like Shroud at big tournaments. It showed all his international tournaments, and he had like a really bad rating there. And everyone in the thread was like, "Oh yeah, he's always been overrated. Never thought he was that good." Also, like I said, with how you define most overrated player, it's less egregious if you're the 50th best player and people are like, "I guess maybe he's the 30th." Whereas if you're like the 5th best player, the third best player in your team, and someone says you're the best, like I think most people, if you did a poll tomorrow on Global Offensive, would have Flusher top 10 players all time. And yet, as I made the case, in his 2 best teams, he wasn't even top 2 in those teams. So think of any great sports team, the third best player is not the top 10 player of all time. And then in terms of Eric, like, I mean, yeah, again, he's like dead on the floor right now, and I've got like a poster and it's slammed by him. I'm like Pippin stepping over Ewing in like 92 or whatever it was. Like,
No.
Daddy, please no.
Let me tell you, okay, with Shroud, okay, the only people think he's awesome are Reddit people, all right? I don't even have to talk about that. With Flusha, he was on one of the best teams in the world. He made the team. Exactly. He made the team great. So him being like overrated, they had probably at the time like 5 of the best 10 players at the time. Just amazing talent, amazing teamwork and skill. But you look at Simple, all right? If you have this thread on who's the best players on time, Simple would probably be top 5 in every single post, all right? He's a great fragger. I'm not saying he's not a great fragger, but you have to have a good team. You have to have a good team game, and he's toxic. That you can't win. Now he's been doing the worst they've been doing in a long time. They're not even making out of stages and stuff in tournaments, like with one of the best players of all time. That's overrated in my book.
Yeah, but they don't really have a proper in-game leader now, so that's the big problem. They never planned to not have an in-game leader. Valve screwed them on the coaching change there, so that's not Simple's fault. Simple doesn't work for Valve. He's not gave you your son.
But if the best CS player in the world, he's able to adjust and make stuff happen. But he's not the best player in all time. He may be a really good fragger, maybe one of the best fraggers of all time. But that's needs to be seen. And best player, you have to have the whole package. You have to have the whole package, man.
I've never actually seen anyone say Simple's the best player of all time.
I see it all the time.
Maybe in the world right now.
I see it a lot. I see it.
I think you see a lot of things that are in your mind and nowhere else, Eric.
Dreamer.
Exactly, okay. Yeah. You're like John Lennon. Let's hope it doesn't end like that for you.
Jesus, my God. Wow. Calm down. Now we're brought the gunplay. Everybody relax. This has been a high pressure, very intense episode so far. My God. First of its kind. But when I look at this, when I look at these picks, I got Eric with the Simple as the most overrated, Thorin with Flusha, and Dust sitting here with Shroud. I mean, if we look back and we say, okay, Simple, he's sick, he's nuts, we know it, we've seen it. What he brings to the table internally, that's up for debate. Obviously, we can't really know what goes on inside the Simple camp, but it has been known to not be pretty. Flusha, I mean, albeit he's a great player. However, I hate to even think that all that clouded, like, cheating nonsense that had happened at one point. Not that he cheated, but that whatever accomplishments that he had just been clouded by accusations, like witch hunts, this and that. But I mean, I don't know. My boy Shroud, he's pretty mechanically good, but I gotta say, out of these selections, Shroud is probably the most overrated. So we're gonna give this one to Mr. Moretti. Dirty Dusty, you're getting the point. Congratulations. And I hope you guys understand why. And if you don't, I actually don't care. It's fine.
It's okay. I just wanted to see Stunner say on camera, like Shroud is the most overrated player of all time. So we've got that now. I'm fine with that. Listen, Dusty on the point. It's fine, man. It's fine. Absolutely fine.
I said,
Thank you, Thorin, for being so kind.
In terms of these players that we've already named here, obviously.
Sure, yeah, of course, yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay, we're gonna go with question 5. And I have a feeling somehow Eric's going to make it to the final round and Thorin's just going to watch this whole thing. I'm kidding. I didn't. But makes that happen. Look, he has hope right now. I see it on his face. It's great.
I'm looking up.
He's usually about 5 points behind everyone else. But question number 5. What needs to be added, changed, or taken away from CSGO by the developers? And because you won the last one, go ahead, Dust.
I'm going to say that the coaching role either needs to be removed or changed because I think it's really limited the amount of top-level Counter-Strike that we can see. It's really hurt teams who have already signed contracts based on the fact that they would be able to have a coach to call. And so I think it was really haphazardly injected into the scene. And so that's definitely a rule. I think either needs to be tweaked, like maybe a compromise can be made where coaches can talk in between rounds or something. Like an adjustment needs to be made, or it needs to be removed entirely. Because I don't think that it was a problem, yet for some reason it was a top of the agenda to change in the game from Valve.
Let's go to Mr. Stromberg.
All right. Pistol damage. Why in the world is a 250 for $300 can one-shot someone up close when you have an M4 for 3,100, can't even headshot, one shot with armor? I don't get it. Why is this thing in the game? Why are pistols they're destroying the game? Yeah, that's it. It's so dumb. I hate pistols. There you go.
Well, fair enough. Thorin, please.
Okay, I'm going to say that better directional sound needs to be put into the game. I mean, especially now that Nuke, as the rework, is back, and we obviously used to have the old Nuke. There was only about, something like a year where there wasn't a Nuke in the pool. And on a map like Nuke, where it's up and down, you especially need very good directional sound. Otherwise, you're not going to know if someone's down or if they're behind the wall. And actually, this is one of the most common things. I have actually never spoken to a pro player about this topic and had them say, no, the directional sound is fine, it's okay. They will even tell you that they've had to learn sometimes in game to just not trust the sound, to just go purely off of their teammates' calls, or to just think could someone be behind me? Even if the sound cue seems in their brain to be telling them, oh, he's over and to the left, maybe he's behind me and to the left. And so I think this is a massive deal because 1.6 especially had some of the best directional sound of any game I've heard. And so as a result, and anywhere someone was on the map, if they made a sound that could get to you, you could pinpoint where it was. Directionally in your mind, you could visualize where they were on the map. So I think for helping these pro players who don't just need to see you, they don't just need to actually be able to know that you're behind that wall because someone told them. If you allow them to be able to hear and use their brains, you'll get more impressive and spectacular plays, in my opinion.
Dust.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this question is we would have a consensus that all three of these things need to be addressed. It's really now just about what's the most important, what would have the biggest impact. And for me, with coaching, you've crushed teams because of this coaching rule. Navi's probably the biggest example, but Liquid's also certainly been affected. Nip had some effect with Threat because he was so revolutionary in that team, and now he's been limited on what he can do. So I just feel it's really just brought down the strategy that's going to be possible and the way that rosters can be structured. It's really limited some of the changes you can make because now you have to keep in mind that you need someone to lead the team from in game if you properly want a leadership role on the team. And all these comparisons to sports and shit just whack because even in sports, coaches can call in between plays and whatnot. So they just really went too heavy-handed on this, and it just has to be changed to kind of free up some of these teams tactically.
First of all, not in every sport can you do that. In theory, in football, there aren't timeouts in European soccer. So the coach can shout, but there's no if a guy's 200 meters away, he's not going to hear him. In terms of the aspect of coaching, killing teams, some of those teams deserve to be killed. Teams like FaZe that just get together star players and then they just want to have someone out of the game calling. I don't see why that should be rewarded. I'm glad that they were forced to become a better team by getting an in-game leader in Carrigan. Likewise, okay, Na'Vi was the team hit the most by the coaching change, but that's just because they didn't know the timing of it. If they'd have known it, they'd have kept Zeus, who's a fantastic in-game leader. They might be an even better team now with Simple in the lineup. So I actually think there's not many examples of teams who were legit good good teams who got killed by the coaching rules. Mainly like teams that were like trying to get good or were bad and were just making up for it by having a smart guy just sit outside of the server. So I think in terms of Valve's thing of like, that's real Counter-Strike to have the in-game leader in the game. I mean, that kind of shows in the best teams. Like very few of them dropped off. In terms of Eric's one, the thing about the pistols, here's the thing. I actually think that a lot of the viewership of CSGO would go down if you took out those pistols. Because, for example, some of the most exciting teams of all time, Virtus Pro, you think about, obviously, the Envious, LDLC, whether CZ, LD, CZ, or whatever they were called. These were teams where they could win on force buys, and then now you can win on a lot more force buys with Tech 9s and CZs than you ever could in 1.6. So 1.6 game, to a purist, is fantastic, but it's a little bit more on the rails. You kind of know who's going to win this round, and you know roughly when the key rounds are going to be. And if you only have gun rounds be the really key ones, there's going to be like about 6 rounds and a half that will be the real deciders for the game. Whereas at the moment, the people can have just Tech 9s and no armor, and they might be able to win that round. So I think for the scrubs, and scrubs are the ones that pay our bills, they're the ones who love people having these overpowered pistols and pulling up behind you and you not being able to kill them with one bullet with an M4 and then just banging your little head off with a CZ.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think you make a kind of a good point right there with that, but you know, there has to be a little balance. Like, I mean, the amount it costs $300 in game to able to one shot someone 250, or at least if you're headshot from far away does like 90 plus damage, it has to be tweaked a little bit. Okay, and as for the I mean, directional sound, I mean, I kind of agree with you, but you know what? I want this game to become better, guys. Come on. And it's a coaching rule. I mean, it did hit teams a lot hard, but I think there's a role of a coach to be able to teach their team how to call strats. Like if you're able to sit back and call strats, you can kind of say it to them to help them out, to teach a player on the team to call strats, to think as an in-game leader. And I think that's the coaching rule may be nerfed, but it kind of changes their role a bit to mentor the team instead of just controlling everything.
Yeah, some people would actually say in like one of the most famous sports for using a coach to call the tactics is American football, NFL. And some people would make the case the best offensive player of all time is Peyton Manning because he didn't use the coach. He was like the offensive coordinator inside the game. That's what Counter-Strike allows. If the in-game leader is in the game, he can actually execute on the fly a tactic. He can be part of the tactic, which makes it happen instantly. Like if Peyton Manning does an instant snap and just throws the ball up without waiting, giving the defense time to reset. So I think in a sense, that is the purest aspect of Counter-Strike. So to change that in some ways is to pervert the great core concept of Counter-Strike.
And as a coach and a former player in Counter-Strike, one of the biggest things in Counter-Strike, even though you have a coach on the sideline calling strats, like when you're in game, the timing, the feel and everything, the coach can never understand that unless he's in the server headshotting these people at the same level. So it's like, yes, a coach is great, but these teams that fall down because of the coaching thing is because of lack of preparation and not, passing the skills to their teammates.
Dust.
I mean, the only thing I can really say here is that, like, off of what Thorin just said, releasing the coaching rule isn't going to pervert that because you're still going to have teams that are going to elect to use the in-game leader and not use a coach. Like, it's not as if you're taking that option away. All you're doing is opening up the game for other teams who already had contracts set up based around the fact that they were able to have coaches call and that this rule kind of abruptly came out. Like, I know Valve kind of hinted at the idea that they wanted to change, but they never really came out and said, yeah, we're going to do this. This is kind of your deadline. Like, it was all just really haphazardly done. And I think it almost kind of came out of nowhere in some teams. And so the fact that they just got wrecked out of that out of nowhere, it kind of stinks. And so, like I said, I think you still have the option for in-game leaders to lead and be legendary. Like, Fallen will always go down as one of the best in-game leaders in the world. So will Pronex. These guys will still be legends in the game. It doesn't necessarily matter if you free up other teams to have coaches call. It's not going to tamper with that at all. Unfortunately, there's no fucking cons against, like, directional sound. Like, I can't argue against that point. Like, there's no cons to that being changed. And yeah, as far as what the Bears said, I think Thorin already pretty much handled that.
I mean, basically, both of my opponents have agreed that my point is very good and they can't argue against it. So if they can't argue against it, how could you give a point against me?
You're right. At this point, I mean, the point does go to you, Thorin, no matter what. But I mean,
there we go.
But I mean, the pistols and the coaching thing, it's like a seesaw of an argument right there, right? So, I mean, think about coaching. Eric's 100% right when he says that these players can't feel the game. Like, the in-game leader needs to be in the game to be as effective as he should be as a leader. But all in all, it doesn't matter. Thorin got the point. You guys suck. So there's that. Can't believe you literally just gave it to him. Right on the platter. Like, you know what?
Man,
He's
listen,
right. So, oh my God, does it get any
listen,
easier?
I know that I may have lost, but the goal is to make CS better, make the community better. You know what? And if I have to agree with my opponent sometimes, I'll do it. I mean, it's a great argument. I can't just lie up and be like, no, you're wrong, you're stupid. I can't do that.
You actually can. It's actually the premise of the show. You can help.
That's no, it's good. So I've been doing that for the whole show, mate. Even if I didn't agree with you.
It's just so good.
All right. I mean, head to head, though, we're going to see Dust and Thorin go in the playoff round. Once again, Eric, your contributions have been noted. We're going to tally up all your points for the end of the season and let you know exactly what it is.
No.
I'm kidding. All right. So we're going to go into the playoff round now. It's going to be Dust Moret and Thorin going head to head. Two of some of the hardest heads in the community, dare I say. And with that being said, question number 1. And you guys realize how this works, correct? Whoever answers first gets that one. Whoever doesn't picks the next. Best all-around on-air talent for CSGO.
Anders.
I believe I said it first, right?
What did you say? You said.
I mean, I picked a different answer than Thorin anyway. I picked Anders.
Yeah.
Oh boy. You know what?
Okay.
I'm gonna let this ride. Eric, let's get back. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's start with just start with the timer now. Go. Dust.
So I picked Anders because he's just all around. He can do a little bit of color casting, a little bit of play-by-play, enjoyable personality. He's like the face of CSGO broadcast talent, in many people's opinions. It even transcends the game of CSGO. So that's why I picked Anders.
Okay. Well, I picked Thorin because do I argue against him now or do I give my point first?
What do you want to do?
Your case.
Okay, so I would pick Thorin because I'm like the key to every important desk. A lot of people don't know this, but I set up everyone else on the desk. Like I literally have carved out time where I've told people like Yanko, you will take like all the rounds. I will never encroach on your time. I'll do the pick ban, which no one ever wanted to do in CS history. I focused on that. So I made desks so they weren't just someone being asked a question and 3 in a row giving their same opinion. I made it so there was a different segment to each desk, like professional sports broadcasting. I always work with my anchors pretty well. I give them like fill topics when we're off the air. So I think you can't really argue against it. No one can fuck me up.
Okay, somehow you just sold yourself as a car, and that's interesting. We're gonna go into sort of just an open rebuttal air right now. So Dust, go ahead and give it a shot.
I mean, despite all of what Thorin said, it's accurate, but I just think that Anders' personality and just his brand and just his presence in the scene, every time he's not at an event, every single person wants him there. And that happens every single time, almost to a point where it like becomes ridiculous. It's insulting to other people. Like I said, I think that when you think of CSGO and you think of broadcasting, you think of Anders. Like that's the first person that comes to mind. He's like the original casting duo with Similar. He even was, before he was even casting with Similar, he was like one of the first guys who like really started doing it on a regular basis. And so I think that you just relate to him immediately when you think about CSGO broadcasting.
Okay, the problem is we're talking about best all-around talent. Now, I not only do the analysis desks, I do interviews with people, I do my own like vlog opinion pieces. I've done over 500 of them. I've done many long-form pieces. I've done lots of different types of events, played different roles on the events. Anders is good when he's in a casting chair, but all-around talent, you put him onto the analysis desk, he's ass. He starts saying stuff like Paufer's an amazing player. He starts just calling Astralis to win every major. They've never even made a final. Like his actual sense of humor is like all right, but you know, it's not that witty. He just kind of like laughs himself, and then he's such a lovable guy. You laugh with him. I make you laugh, even if you don't want to laugh. I make you just because, like, love me or hate me, I'm just that good.
Eric, is it very possible that Thorin just won his own argument with himself?
I mean, I was actually leaning towards Anders at first, but that whole speech right there just kind of sold me on Thorin. Like he does a lot of the dirty work that a lot of people don't see.
I feel like I'm watching Interstellar right now, looking through the bookcase at this argument because I don't even know what just happened. Oh, my bad. It is what it is. Deal with it. Wow, Thorin, somehow you managed to do that. Congratulations. You're going to get your own point for yourself. I'm sure Dust is not even upset about that one because it's just so ridiculous. But
that was legendary status shit right there. Like,
that was actually impressive. Not bad. Okay, so here's another one. Ready? Best current competitive female CSGO player.
Secret.
Zaz.
Oh, Giuliano.
Ooh, all right. And Thorin, go.
Well, first of all, a lot of the women who are hired to be pro gamers aren't necessarily hired off their skill. So when you say best, that's like a very loose term. It's like, what is best? So in terms of being the best female pro, I think Zaz is actually the most famous in the world right now, being the most famous for quite a few years for skill and for being known for marketing. I think also she looks fantastic in pictures and holding a mouse and a keyboard in her shirt. So she's doing a great job of marketing. It's making me want to look when there's articles about her. Also, she has a really interesting name. It's a Z with 2 capital A's, and it's got a Z in, so that already gets my attention. And then there's the big 2 A's. So I think, like, all in all, the name brand's there. Like, there's the aesthetic quality of a beautiful woman,
All right.
and also she's got good skills.
Okay, good God. Please, Dust.
I mean, I think that Giuliano is more responsible for Secret being successful. She actually leads the team. She puts up as good of numbers, if not better than Zaz. So from a player perspective, she actually performs better on Secret if you want to go that route instead of the route that Thorin went. Also, she seems to be also pretty well branded. She's the one that people seem to always go to for interviews and such whenever they want to interview players from the female scene. So it seems like she does get a little bit more attention in that regard than Zaz. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Giuliano.
Okay, we're just gonna open. Hold on. Open the floodgates.
Okay.
Now, go.
So since Dust has agreed that like a component of being the best female isn't just like skill, he also said like, in terms of marketing, she's good. Well, Giuliano now actually is doing some really terrible marketing right now because she's making men hate women in gaming because she said these silly things that were quoted in this BBC article. Whereas actually Zaz has always been someone where, a lot of the men like just thought she was pretty cool. She hasn't really been very outspoken about those kind of political topics. She just kept it about the game. And actually that's kind of what people like, I think. So that factor is like very much heavily going in her favor. Also, she was one of the best 1.6 females of all time. Giuliano was probably but a young girl at the time that we never knew about.
Let's go, Dust.
Yeah, again, I'm just going to approach the angle of like Giuliano being the best player in CSGO right now in female CSGO because of the fact that she leads her team. She puts up great numbers. She's very responsible for the success of her team within the female scene. So I'm just going to kind of take that approach, to be honest. Like, I think that Giuliano is the better player between the two as far as what she contributes to her team from what I've seen.
Okay, well, that's interesting because Dust actually made an argument and then he purposely didn't include it in the second part of when he said it. So he sort of disagreed with himself and corrected himself. So he kind of agreed with what I said on part of the argument.
I wouldn't say that just because I didn't highlight that in the last 10 seconds that I had that I was avoiding it.
He also just chose he had another example.
Also, even with the whole Giuliano thing that he made. So the whole thing they brought about Giuliano about the quotes, wasn't that misquoted according to her? And so in that case, it's not even necessarily her fault.
She never showed us the original quote, so we can't just take her word for that, I'm afraid. We need to have evidence.
All I know is every time I look over at Eric while you guys are going at it, this dude has had about 15 different facial expressions, all of which are very, very fitting to what the two of you are saying.
I put my fate into the hands of Judge Eric. You told me, Eric, who's right?
Eric, no, this is jury Eric. He's the jury, I'm the judge.
Okay.
Eric, let's hear what you have to say.
I've taken account of both your arguments, and Thorin made some good points, but again, Zaz, 1.6. We're talking about CSGO. And as much as I want to lean towards you, the point of BBC misquoting, I don't think that's valid, even though she hasn't shown us the right quote. And I do believe Giuliano, because I coach a ladies team, and they talk about her being the best player over any Zaz. So I have to go with Giuliano.
What would they know about who's good?
Well, they do some research too, Thorin.
Okay.
They do some research too.
Fair enough.
Okay, so when I step back and I look at this and I hear Thorin's initial argument is Zaz is really cool and she's hot in pictures, and then
don't undervalue that.
Dust is going more towards the statistical side of things. I mean, it is a 50-50 there on the fronts of argument, but I mean, hell, even Eric's leading towards Dust on this one. I think I got to go with Dust too. So congratulations, Dust. You're still in the game. You haven't been just surpassed just yet, but it's really close because
it's still
Thorin,
young. The game is still young.
It's actually not. This is almost over. But Thorin is stomping on that ass, so you better be careful, dude. I will say that much. Let's go to the next question. Well, don't worry about that. Worry about yourself. Okay. Who is winning the American Minor? The teams are TSM,
Immortals.
C9, Immortals, or Muffin Lightning. Don't write off Muffin Lightning. Jesus.
Immortals.
C9.
Well, let's hear it. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thorin.
so the last time the two teams played, Immortals won that. The last time the two teams were at a separate tournament, so iBuy Power Masters, Immortals won in the final 2-1. Then when they went to iBuy Power, IEM Oakland, which is what iBuy Power Masters qualified them for. Cloud9 did not get out of their group. Immortals got out of their group in second and actually were able to finish top 6 at the tournament. Immortals, basically, ever since they changed out Zeus, who was the kind of the in-game leader before, who had some issues, and brought in Steel, have only looked better and better. And as a result, at the moment, they look like the team that's on the rise, whereas, well, I'll just leave it at that for now.
I think Cloud9 is actually still a little bit better structured than Immortals, thanks to the adjustment they have to make because of Zeus left. I also think that Cloud9, despite like a little bit of trouble against Immortals head-to-head, actually has the better title in recent times. Like winning the EPL thing was no joke in comparison to when Immortals has won titles. It's usually been against like other North American teams or like a weaker travel to that final, in fact. So I just think that Cloud9 has like better overall team, particularly now that we see guys like Unimatic in such a good form, Stewie being such a playmaker. I think they actually have a little bit more firepower than Immortals.
Thorin, I'm going to open the floodgates for you and go now.
So since these two teams are both at the tournament, we're talking about winning it. It's not like who's better overall. It's about who's probably going to win the head-to-head. It's probably going to be the final. So Immortals won even with Zeus at Northern Arena when they in Toronto, when they had him in the lineup. They won that final. Then they won the IBET Power Masters with Steel in the lineup, and that was actually the first event that they brought Steel back in for. At the last 4 of the last 5 tournaments Cloud9's been to, they have not gotten out of the group stage. So I think that Cloud9 actually looks at the team that's going downhill, where, including they didn't even get out of the group stage at DreamHack Winter. Quite a poor tournament in terms of like tier 2, tier 3 teams. Immortals looks like a team that's going up, and they're at a higher level right now, in my opinion. And they beat them in the head-to-head matchup.
I mean, I think that the only real drop-off that Cloud9 had was DreamHack Winter. I mean, yeah, sure, they didn't make it out of groups at IEM Oakland, but they're going up against a really strong group. They lost to the eventual champions. They lost to SK and eventual finalists. It's not like going out of the groups there was that big of a deal. And I think when you look outside of those 2 tournaments and you look at before that, they've done well. I mean, winning that EPL final was not that long ago. That was just a few weeks ago, and that was a huge, big-time win. And like I said, they have all the pieces to be a successful team, so I think that they should be able to win the minor.
I mean, Cloud9 was unable to get out of an E-League group that didn't feature any God tier teams. They went to IEM Oakland, like we said here. They didn't get out of the group there. They were in position where, when they were at DreamHack Winter, they were in a group that literally had 0 teams that anyone has ranked top 10 right now. And they did not get out of the group. They had Renegades. They had Gambit, these teams, etc. These are not teams that people look at as world beaters, and they lost in a best of 3 to Gambit. So this is a scenario, and they got upset before that. The only team they were able to beat was Optic, who did really badly. So at the moment, Cloud9 has not shown us any form in literally 3 tournaments. No, 4. 4, because you can't IBET Power. 4 tournaments ago is when Cloud9 did anything. Immortals have done stuff in the last 2 tournaments.
Well, Eric, I'm going to ask you to agree or disagree here in a second, but I'm going to have to go with the fact that I keep hinging on this IBA Power Cup thing with Immortals C9. I really do. I keep coming back to that. And then if we do look at the DreamHack Winter thing, it's not looking so hot. So, I mean, honestly, Eric, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking Immortals comes out the victor in that one.
I agree.
Yep. And so that is going to be another point for Thorin. They put it up there before I even said it because they already knew. I think they had already had their finger on the button or something up there. I don't really know if that's probably what happened.
They just did what felt right.
It just came natural in the production.
Yeah, exactly.
Room.
Instinctive.
All right. Look, we got 2 more questions, and it really won't matter if you lose this one, Dust. Now, the question is, if you had to change one part of Nuke, what part would you change?
Vent. I would change the vents so that you couldn't.
Hold on. We need Dust. What's your answer?
Oh, okay, my bad.
I would change the outside rafters to where it's not as easy to access them.
Okay. And start the timer. Go, Thorin.
Okay, so I think on Nuke, the big problem they've had is in the old version, they made it so you could just run through the vents, and that made people too fast to rotate. And then they thought the solution to that was to make it so you could only go through one vent. But then in that scenario, then you couldn't go as quickly. And so I think they need to do one of the two. Like, I think they need to have it like the old Nuke, but with one vent, or they need to go back to 2 vents. That would be my suggestion, and have it so that you can only crawl like 1.6. That way, if you have the 2 vents, there are a lot more options for the CTs to rotate. Also, terrorists, by the way, can actually just fake that door smoke and go down that one. And then you're also in a situation where it's like it's evenly balanced for both teams. So I think that provides a lot more play because people can't just, terrorists can't just instantly go to one site. CTs can't instantly go to one site.
For me, I just think that outside control is too powerful right now in Nuke because there's just so much shit you have to worry about. When that smoke wall goes out, you got to worry about secret. You got to worry about people going through mini. You got to worry about people coming up through the upper rafter. It's just too accessible. Before that used to take like a triple boost or something, or double boost even, to like get up there and be able to attack heaven from that area and just get up there. So I think it just creates like too many problems to have to deal with on the outside area of the map. Meanwhile, with the whole vent thing, I think like the way the vent is now isn't that big of a deal. Like Terrace can still use it to come down squeaky and do quick drop plays. And even though there isn't that extra vent for CTs to rotate, they still have plenty of options, and you still see CT sides do well. So I don't know that it hinders them that much, whereas I feel like the Raptors affects gameplay more.
So the biggest problem, can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the biggest problem actually on Nuke, believe it or not, I actually think is the terrorist side. Because what happened is, all you want from Nuke is it should still be CT-sided, just not as ridiculous as the old version. So at the moment, part of the difficulty is, I think part of why terrorists get so many rounds isn't that they have the map figured out. I think that it is that there's areas that are just too difficult to control if you're on the CT side. Now, the problem is, if you take away the skywalk, that doesn't actually allow terrorists to still have some chance. It just makes it the old Nuke. And the problem with the old Nuke is you can just lock down that outside area. I mean, famously, Get Right on NIP used to do this all day long. And then you only have the upper and the ramp area. And now you can just stack those two sites. So the big problem is that I don't see how taking that away would actually bring any benefit to the map. It would take away a problem. It wouldn't solve anything. Whereas to me, the vents issue actually solves like an issue that's been in every version of Nuke and actually puts you towards where it's like now a more balanced map in that sense.
I think just going to his point that he just made about how if you take away the skywalk, you hurt terrorists a bit and it just becomes old Nuke. That's not true, because I think that upper is just easier to execute. You have half the angles taken away because half the upper rafters that CTs would normally play don't even exist anymore. They're all isolated over to the other side of the upper bomb site. So I think that you already have opened up terrorists with more options because that you've done this, and just the wider angles when you peek hut, just all these different things have already structured the map real well. With the skywalk though, for CTs, it just becomes like too much to handle on the outside area a lot of the time. It's no secret that a lot of the teams that have success on the map are able to make plays outside, like these different smoke walls we've seen used, the different ways people use those rafters. That's where teams get a lot of their rounds, is by using that. And I just feel like it's just too much to handle.
Okay, hold on.
Can I make one last point? No?
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Okay, my bad.
We're going to draw the line right here. I don't know what you were thinking trying to make one last point. Absolutely outlandish. Eric, being that you played a god tier version of this game, which of these arguments do you think is correct, sir?
Can I say neither and to say I think I'd rather have ramp to be changed? How about that? No, but out of you guys too, I know vents is a problem, but I think outside's a bigger problem, to be honest, because there's so many angles for T's and CTs to look at, and not all smokes. Like you literally have to use like 4 smokes, like 3-4 smokes, and a whole bunch of utility to even cross outside. And I don't like it. So I think out of the two, outside's worse than the vents.
Okay,
even though they're both problems.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have one more question. I'm gonna go ahead and give a point to Dust, and because the Bears was involved, somehow you made a valid.
Do I get a point?
You're not even in the game, but you get a point too.
Woo!
Just take a point, dude. It's not even a pity point. You earned it. Last question. Let's close it out right here. Best former 1.6 professional player still competing.
Forrest.
Oh, easy. Thanks for that, Dust, because I think I'm going to go ahead and say, let's see, who was good at 1.6 still? I'll take Get Right.
And go Thorin.
Okay, so the thing is, Get Right was actually better than Forrest for the last few years of 1.6. And he might have even ended up being a greater player, but there wasn't more years in the game. Into CSGO, he was easily the best player for the first year. I think if you look over CSGO and you go year by year, he's had more years where he was both better than Forrest and better than all the other 1.6 transfers. At the moment, Forrest's main best period this year was in the middle of the year when actually NIP was like on a bit of a downswing after they won Malmo, and then they had a little bit of a cooling off period. They were losing DreamHack Summers and not getting out of the group at majors. And I think recently in their return to form, you see the tournaments they've won. Aside from this last one and all the other ones, it was actually Get Right who was the best player again. He was back to being a very dynamic player. And also, he's actually been able to play multiple styles. Forrest's only ever been an entry fragger, being that aggressive player. Get Right, when they became really good on cash earlier in the year, actually was sometimes entering on cash. Sometimes was actually the guy initiating. So he's got versatility, and I think overall he's got more years as a top in both.
I mean, I feel like the argument's always been like either Neo or Forrest is the best player of all time coming from 1.6. I know he says that Get Right was better towards the end. Look, I can't even challenge Thorin on 1.6 history. I wasn't around, but that's just always what I've been told from different experts from the scene, including I think Thorin himself said that was kind of the debate. When it comes to CSGO, I mean, Forrest has won 2 MVP medals in the last couple of months, and he certainly earned those. He's been a big part of why NIP has won some of the titles that they've won recently. He is, yes, certainly known as more of an entry fragger, but his op game has certainly helped out his team, particularly on T sides at times, being able to open things up. So no, I just think that Forrest has had like ridiculous numbers lately. I think he's been like the most talked about guy for NIP this year as far as the level of play that he's had to help his team be successful.
So the problem is when you say like about the overall over both games, I actually think that the Neo argument there isn't even existing. I don't know why people bring that up because he's never been a star player in CSGO. So I think that immediately disqualifies him. Doesn't matter what he did in 1.6. Whereas I think if you look at Forrest, nearly all the time, NIP's been a really great team. He was the second best player in his own team. Whereas actually Get Right has been amazing at both games.
I mean, again, I just think that when you look at NIP's recent history, I feel like Forrest is one that gets talked about more as being like the guy who has like essential impact opening up the map. Sure, like Get Right has opened up his game a bit. He has been a little bit more involved, but I still feel like Forrest is one that gets talked about the most NIP nowadays. Like I said, the MVP medals that he's been able to acquire in the last few months, and he's just been the biggest piece, I think, of NIP outside of like Threat, who helped revolutionize him tactically. I think he's been one of the biggest pieces that have helped him score some of the titles that they've gotten this year, as well as some of the best finishes they've had have been off the back of Forrest, like having really big games.
Well, I mean, Eric, who's going to win the show?
Well, as much as I love both those players and they've really showed and paved the way for Counter-Strike history, I mean, Thorin makes a very good point that Get Right has been playing consistently well for years. And even though Forrest has been playing well, he's been playing his best probably recently, like within the last couple months or last 6 months, rather than Get Right, who's been consistently great and a huge part of NIP's success in the years. So it's like years to months to me. So I'd say Get Right is definitely the better player overall.
They say, what is it? We don't know where Get Right is. Where's Get Right? Where is he? Probably right behind you, right? So yeah. There's the thing. I mean, that's pretty much, it has to be a no-brainer. I mean, Get Right has been that guy, and you see the passion with this guy. You see him still play with full-hearted effort. He wants it, and for 1.6 players still in the game, they're thinning out. The population is definitely thinning out. So. With that being said, congratulations, Thorin. You win yet again a close bout here with Mr. Moretti and Eric with a strong 1 point.
2 points. All right.
Thorin, you already gave one tremendous shout out to yourself already in the form of an answer to a question. Would you like to give any shout outs here to close this out?
Yeah, I mean, as usual, you know, much like on analysis desk, it looks like I'm the star of the show, but I wouldn't be where I was without the guys who helped make me what I am. So Eric, giving all those ridiculous answers as usual, that's always incredible. Like, he throws up those underhand ones that I crack out the park. And then Dust, you know, he made it a close battle. You know, he made it exciting. So now people are going to think I really competed against a top level opponent. But then he also like handed me that answer up on a silver platter where he even said he couldn't argue against me. So it's like in the end, everyone was working towards the same goal, which was like, let's have some thrills, let's have some spills, but in the end, let's make sure the best person wins.
Jesus Christ, that was beautiful. Please, Dust, add to it.
No, I mean, it's great playing against Thorin. No doubt about it. It was cool to be able to do this show with him. I've enjoyed working on Desk with him, so it's cool to do this show. Yeah, so definitely hope everyone enjoyed it. You can follow me up if you want to catch extremely budget versions of Thorin Thoughts. You can follow me on YouTube where I try to do something similar. But yeah, that's really about it. It's great working with these guys, and the Bear's funny as always. Always good to work with.
Funny man. Shut us down.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and I appreciate competing against these brains of esports. As you know, not only am I competing, I'm also learning as well, and so that's what makes everything so great. You know, you got to take it in. Take what you don't know. Can't be, you know, I'm not on this pedestal, right? I'm down here, and I'm learning. I take that to heart.
You're actually in the up and up from other shows. Like, you've got 2 points this one, so that's pretty good.
Hey, look,
you're average.
It's baby steps. You know, one of these shows I might be winning one. You just never know. You just never know, man.
Well, look, I'm going to thank you guys for coming out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We got off to a little spicy start. It was a good time. I I hope to see some of you again in the future. And as always, thanks for playing Put Up or Shut Up. And that does it for this episode of Put Up or Shut Up. I'm your host, Stunna. You can follow me on Twitter @Stunna. And you can also tweet questions to my counterpart, GRT. That's @GRTCSGO on Twitter, if you want to ask questions to the next contestants of Put Up or Shut Up. I thank you for joining me, and I hope you tune in next time.